Hi, this is Megan Jackson. I am here with sketch number 1 from the June 2021 Worldwide Virtual Crop from Creative Memories. So sketch number 1, you can see here, we've got a 2-page layout. It's a fairly straightforward sketch once you get, I've got the measurements in there for you. It's got the 3 photos on either side. It does have a circular kind of embellishment detail. Of course, you could do that in various shapes, however you want to do it, but kind of that cluster effect going here with a title. So one of the things you're going to see is we do have kind of this outer frame, and then it uses almost like strips that would come across. And you could do that various ways. I've given you the measurements for each one of these strips if you want to piece them together, which I will be doing. Or you could cut a overall background frame and then place a couple of stripes in on top of that, so you don't have to actually piece it individually together. So I have my photos already done and all matted. I did change the size of the photos ever so slightly. My photos, I wasn't able to do 2 squares here. So what I did is I've got one of my photos is a little bit longer, and I went ahead and I did mat all of my photos. And the reason why is when you see what, you see my photos and you see the papers I chose, I wanted to have a little bit more separation between my photos and my, and the background. So I went ahead and I've got a fun 4x6 or roughly a 4x6. And here you can see this photo wouldn't quite go square. So I did it as a rectangle. I did make them a little bit larger. They are closer to 4x4 here. And this is close to a 4x5. I just wanted them, I wanted them a little bit bigger. And so that was a great option. And then I've got some 3.5x5s over here, both matted. And then I went ahead with a 4x6 up here at the top. So you can see I'm keeping fairly close to the overall layout. You can see how the images are going to go. And so now it's about putting the background together. And for this particular layout, I am digging into my stash and I am pulling out my oh so lovely vintage chic papers. So I have the decorative papers and the embossed cardstock. Now, one of the reasons I am going to be actually kind of piecing everything together is because I am trying to be as conservative as possible with my paper usage. So here's what I'm doing. I've got this really lovely tonal background. It's kind of got that grungy, distressed look to it. So it's the embossed cardstock, and I'll be using this as a background. And then I've got this lovely cream teals, a little bit of orange and the gold in there. And then I picked this aqua teal color in here. It's got the same dots that kind of go through it, so it really worked together. So I'm using those as my 2 decorative papers. I've got this embossed background paper. So what I'm going to show you that I'm doing is I'm going to be piecing this whole thing together. I am actually going to do an internal cut to make my frame here. One of the reasons I did that was 1, because I want to conserve paper, and 2, because I actually am going to use this internal section that I cut out of this embossed cardstock. I'm going to punch it to make my circular details here. So I'll explain those when we get to that point, but we're going to go ahead and just lay out the base background page. And I'm going to put together the right-hand side of the layout because the left side is basically a mirror of each side. So I'm going to put this side together because I'll show you how I did the embellishment. I'll show you the title. And then at the very end, you'll see how it all comes together. So let's go ahead and get started. One thing I am going to show you how I did is that I did that cut with the frame here on the cardstock. So I'm going to pick up my photos and set them aside for a moment. And I'm going to grab my trimmer. And I'm going to go ahead, sorry about that. I am going to go ahead and I like to rotate my trimmer parallel to me or parallel to the table. And I'm just doing a 1-inch frame. I'm only doing a frame on each side. So this first cut, I'm going to trim from 1 inch all the way over to 11 inches. This next one, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, line it back up at 1 inch. And this one, I want to just make it like a C shape. You can kind of imagine this here being a C. I'm going to go ahead and just cut it as a C shape. One of the things, I will be building this on a piece of white cardstock, the overall page. So I can really have this be lots of pieces that I'm going to build on that white cardstock. So I'm not worried about this outer frame being what they would consider stable. I'll stabilize it on the white cardstock. So now you can see I have this really nice big piece of the tonal cardstock, embossed cardstock. I don't need to do anything with this. I've already used my other piece from the other sheet to make various details that I needed for the rest of my layout. So I can just set this aside as a piece of scrap from this collection and use it in something else. But I've got this nice shape here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a piece of cardstock. It's just a piece of white cardstock. It was probably the insert to the top loading pages. And you can see here how this is just going to sit on there. And I'm going to go ahead and put down some adhesive. And lay this in here. Like I said, I'm building the right side of the page. This is the side that has the title and everything on it for this sketch. Of course, you can adjust it as you need. So there we go. That's on there. Now I'm going to go ahead and I am going to grab my, my cutting mat. To get everything else lined up, I'm going to need my cutting mat so I can put things on here nice and even. With this sketch, I do need to maintain a border around it. And it's about, I think about a 1/2 inch border, top, bottom, and this side. So I'm going to try to maintain that. And for me, what I'm doing is all of my pieces that I cut. So I use the measurements here to cut each one of these bars of paper. And then what I've done is I left them all 12 inches wide. I am going to use my T-square ruler over here to help me line up that 1/2 inch. And then what I'll do is I'm going to let it overhang in the middle, and then I'll do one cut over here on the side to clean up all that hangover. And that way I didn't have to cut each one of these individually down to that 11.5 inches and worry about them not quite lining up just perfectly. This way I can concentrate on lining them up on the one side, and I'll use my trimmer to cut off the excess on the other side. That I wasn't worried about having those 1/2 inch scraps. That's not a whole lot to work with. So this just works out really well. So the pieces, how I'm putting this together is I'm going to start with my light blue pieces. And these are represented in the white bars of the layout. So I will start, I have my top piece will go in here, and it's going to come in at that 1/2 inch from the top. So I'm going to go ahead and start kind of piecing these in. I am using repositionable adhesive. It's going to give me a little bit more flexibility. I want to make sure my paper is on my mat. And I'm going to come in here, and I'm starting over here at the 1/2 inch, and I want to make sure I'm 1/2 inch from the top. And I just need to make sure that I get that on there as square as possible. And I'm using this ruler to make sure I've got to come over just a little bit. And this part is going to be, it's a little bit tricky. I'm not going to lie. The way I'm putting this together is probably a little bit of a pain in the rear end compared to how else it could be done. I could have just used an entire piece of that blue paper, but like I said, I want to conserve. So the way I've done this, I really only had to cut up one piece of 12 by 12 rather than cutting two pieces to make the double page layout. The next thing I'm doing here is I have the pretty tonal paper, or the pretty designer paper, the statement print. I want these to sit on top of my blue tonal pieces. So I'm actually just going to kind of dry fit that in place. And that's going to let me come in here and place my blue piece. And I know I've got an overhang. I cut these. They should actually be able to overhang a little bit. I cut all of my blue pieces about 1/4 inch wider than what's on the measurements. And that's going to allow me to overhang on that. So I think my blue piece is going to come in here right at that 9 inches. I should be good. So I look like I'm lined up nicely here. 3 inches on this side equates to 9 inches on that side. I've got my T-square piece in. I'm just making sure it feels like it's lined up. I'm holding it in place. I'm going to scoot this one to the side. I'm holding it in place. I'm going to grab my adhesive and I'm going to get it tacked in. So this way it's on. It's not going to go anywhere. And now I can go ahead and bring in this designer paper here. I love all the colors in this Vintage Chic. This is definitely a color palette I would love to see come back. I would love to see these designs come back. So maybe we can convince Creative Memories to do that for us. So I'm just kind of using the guide. This paper is not printed 100%. This blue paper is not printed 100% straight, but I can sort of use the bubbles, the dots here to help a little bit. I do want to make sure that I am coming over and lining up nicely on this edge over here. Like I said, I'm going to trim this side. And now I just need to come here to the bottom and I need to place this blue strip here at the bottom. And I want to come up, I'm leaving that 1/2 inch gap at the bottom. I'm lined up here at 1/2 inch. I should be pretty good. And then I'll place my final and I'm placing this, it's a total of 1 inch from the bottom. Keeping this left side or the right side nice and even as possible. And sticking that down. So now you can see I've got this overhang on the other edge. I'm just going to grab my trimmer and I'm going to come in here, line it up, and I'll cut those pieces off and I'll have a nice flush edge. And so there we can see I've got the right page built for the layout. I'm going to set my mat aside and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to show you how I'm going to put this left side page together. Or excuse me, the right side. This is the right side. So I'm going to have the horizontal photo and I've got these 2 vertical photos. I need to make sure my spacing accommodates those and get them placed nicely. The photos will line up here on the right edge. And then for my detail, so what I decided to do is I decided that the Vintage Chic layout, this stuff, it looks really good with the Baroque frame punch. So I've made some medallions with the Baroque frame punch. So what I did is I cut those, I used that extra bit of the designer paper. This is actually, or excuse me, the embossed cardstock. Remember when I cut that frame out of the middle, or that big square out of the middle? This is actually from the first one I did. And so I went ahead and I cut 4x4 squares. And then I used my frame punch and I just punched all 4 sides. And you come up with this really lovely medallion, which works great with this Vintage Chic paper. It has that nice detail to it. Now, if you got the secret box, you got the really fun blooming medallion punch. So I thought I needed a little bit of detail there in the middle. So that same color, so this tonal, this embossed cardstock, the other side is this fun orange. So it's going to pop the color a little bit. So I'm placing that in the middle. So you can see how that's starting to take shape. Now, something I did think about, well, did I want to do a circle behind it to kind of let that stand out? But as I was messing with colors, I really wasn't liking it. If I did it solid, with the rich brown cardstock, it was going to be too heavy. So what I ended up doing is I thought, well, maybe I could do a ring. You can see there's this line detail around these elements in the paper. So I went ahead and I used the circle trimmer to make a thin ring that actually fits perfectly with the medallion. So I've got this really nice detail. I'm actually really excited about how this turned out. It was one of those things you're not 100% sure, and you're just like, well, let's give it a try. And you put it together and you're like, oh, perfect. So now I have here is I'm going to be doing a title at the top. And I am a huge fan of the metal dies for lettering. And I'll tell you why. I do have a silhouette. I can make myself a custom title here. I run into problems with my silhouette that I get wrapped up in making it absolutely perfect. And I'll spend, it seems like hours looking through various fonts and what do I want it to say and what size can it be. Metal dies allow me to limit my choices. And it allows me to what feels more productive as I have like 5 fonts to choose from and I can make it work. So I have this lovely sans serif font, which is a very straight. So I just did that in the rich brown, this nice deep brown cardstock. It says sweet, and then my daughter's name is Sarah. So I went ahead and I have a script die set that I went ahead and used that tonal, that embossed cardstock, and I punched her name in this script letters. So I'll have to put this all together. And her name is Sarah. So it's going to say Sweet Sarah. And so that is how the right side page turns out. So I'm going to be carrying over this detail here. I'm going to carry it over to the left page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to put everything together and I'll come back and talk to you about that left page. It's pretty much the same with one small difference, and I'm going to explain to you why I'm having that difference. All right, so I'm back here. I've got both sides of the layout completed, and you can see that I did stay pretty true to the sketch. We've got those embellishment details here. We've got the same overall layout here with the title in here. What I did leave out is they do have a journal box on this side, and I don't have a whole lot of journaling that I will probably add to this layout. These were just some fun photos that I did of my daughter in my studio when we lived in Phoenix. So I'm probably just going to come over here with the brown journal pen and probably just do a basic date, maybe a quick little blurb, and make sure that I include Sarah's age in there. So overall, the layout is complete. I'm really excited with how well it turned out. I'm really excited about those embellishment details. That blooming medallion punch pairs really nice. You can see with the Baroque frame punch. I did add a little bit of that detail. I wanted to carry that orange back up here to the top with the title. So like I said, overall, I'm really pleased, and that is sketch 1. I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with, so be sure to share them in the All Access group. So thanks for watching.